I had really been depressed the leading up to that near death experience. I wasn't happy about life, but I was very materialistically driven, and I wanted to graduate and I wanted to get a good job, and that was my focus. I was agnostic. And when this accident happened, when this car accident happened, I knew that all control had been taken out of my hands. And so in that moment, I was no longer in control of anything. I had to wait and see who would show up, how long the ambulance would take. And it was really a very long waiting game. I waited for 17 hours in the hospital, and people find that unbelievable. They don't understand, that someone could wait without painkillers for that long. But the problem was there was not enough neurosurgeons, and this is a college town, 50,000 college students. So there's a lot of accidents, and people were taxed, like doctors and surgeons were overworked. And one surgeon didn't come in to help me because I didn't have health insurance. And then I overheard this. And at that point, I became very upset and very angry. And I thought, ooh, just like all my anger at this world was just there on the surface. I wasn't thinking about love or light or God. I made one kind of foxhole prayer, the kind of prayer you make when you're in bad shape. I was like, oh, if there is a God, get me through this. That was it. And eventually the neurosurgeon who did operate on me, she had been on duty for 40 hours. She went home. She ended up taking a nap and also resting a bit, and then coming back to work on me. And when she came back to work on me, I just went into this place of surrender because there was nothing else I could do. I signed the paper and it said 17% chance of death. And I remember thinking, well, I'm young, I'm strong, I'm probably going to make it through this surgery. I couldn't imagine not making it through. And then I was under. Well, the next thing that I knew, I was outside of my body. And the minute I was outside of my body, looking at my physical body on the operating table with blood coming out of it and the surgeon standing around me, I was kind of like in the corner of the room, my spirit body looking down on it. And I felt excited. I mean, there was no other way to describe that moment other than pure joy that we go on. I knew, and this was probably just the out of body experience at this point. I'm out of body watching the surgery, and I see these amazing angels. They might have been 9 feet or 8 feet tall, and they were sending light through the surgeon's hand into my spine, and my whole spine lit up. And the minute you're outside of body, time and space is not the same as we perceive it. And it was almost as if I could see parts of the future. I could see that the surgeons would pick out little pieces of bone fragments, that the angels were assisting them. And this was all just kind of shown to me. And we pick up information differently. And so I knew that the angels were sending light into my spirit body, into my physical body. I knew that I'd run, that I'd walk, that everything would be okay. And then they kind of playfully said, watch this. And they really wanted me to see this surge of light that went through my entire body and kind of lit up my body. And then the monitor stopped. Then I realized, oh, wait, now the doctors are going to know I'm dead. Now, and I saw the anesthesiologist kind of jump, like I guess he was the one that had to deal with it first. And so, he jumps up, runs around, and I remember thinking, I'm out of here. I don't want to see this bloody mess. There's more exciting things out there to see. Like I'm outside of my physical body. And you just think. And so the minute I had this thought, oh, I'll go through the door and I'll go into another part of the hospital, I did. And then I saw my stepdad get a candy bar. And so many people, so I'll stop in this interview and say, yes, I verified this with my stepdad and mom and dad, and they remember him coming into the room with a candy bar. So yes, that has been verified. I saw him, but to me, what was funny about the moment was they were very health conscious, and they always, looked down on people who ate sugar. And I was like, well, there he is eating sugar, like he's eating a candy bar. And so I found it funny and amusing, but I didn't know him that well. And I also just kind of wished that my mom had a happy marriage with him. And I felt myself at that point disconnecting. The minute I left the room, where my body was being operated on, the spirit form was so exciting that it was kind of like discarding a coat. You know, if you've ever left a coat somewhere and you don't miss it until you're out in the cold, it was almost like I didn't miss my body. It was just gone. And so here I am, you know, in this other realm. The minute I thought of the night sky, I was in space, you might call it, and first it was our stars like above Austin, and then I just quickly transitioned. Now I know, and people always say, you know, oh, why do people keep adding to their near death experiences? Well, I just knew I was in the stars. I just knew I was in a beautiful cosmos until the images from James Webb Telescope came out. And then I recognized some of these places and I looked it up and I was like, that's close to 7 million light years away. So what, in 2 seconds, I was above the earth and then I was way out in space, millions of light years away. I really do believe that the space-time continuum is breaking down, you know, that it does during near death experiences, that you can't classify, you know, how far you go, where you go, how much time was there, because to me it felt like that could have been a week, or it could have been a split second, or it could have been a day, who knows. But then I was in this place which I kind of looks like the Carina Nebula to me. It was just beautiful with pinks and, you know, stars far away, and I'm floating there, and then I feel this intelligence of God coming towards me. And I say God, creator, source. It was just a knowing that something, I was created, that was creator, and creator had a vast intelligence, and creator communicated through this light. So this light was just information and light waves, kind of like the angels sent to me. This was the beginning of getting information from God, and I was hearing things like, be like a little child, love is all that matters, it's all that you take with you when you leave that place. Remember to remind them to go to nature, remember to be kind, you know, just very simple things. And I remember thinking, love is all that matters. Isn't that a Beatles song? You know, can I have some mathematical equations or something? This is what I'm taking, you know, to humanity. It doesn't seem like enough. And then I was shown parts of my life, and the parts of my life that were good were the moments I was in nature, kind of playing, meditating as a kid, playing with wild animals actually, and little rabbits. I did this thing as a kid where I would kind of meditate and I'd be really still and quiet, and sometimes wild animals would come close to me, and God said that that was a beautiful thing, you know, that I was getting in touch with my essential nature. And then I saw how, as I got older, I had been hurt by bullying and people's judgments. I didn't really see that in the near death experience, but I saw how I became judgmental. And it was almost embarrassing that I was like other people who had judged me based on different things, on the clothes that I wore. And I remember thinking, oh, I'm going to be better when I return. I'm really going to look at people's worth in a different way. Like the heart is what matters. And that seemed to be another message from God. Look at people's hearts, not their outward appearances, but look at who they are inside. And I saw that these people I worked with prayed for me and thought that I was depressed. And I remember thinking, wow, I didn't even bother to talk with them because I didn't think they were, quote, cool. And here they were going home, this married couple, and actually praying for me. And I just felt in the deepest part of my soul, shame, a little shame, but also excitement that I was going to grow up and do better. Because really, you know, I was 22 and, you know, this near death experience happened when I was still young. And a lot of young people are judgmental of older people or people around them. And I remember thinking, but I'm going to be different now. And that was my hope, and that was my soul's greatest wish. And you might say my greatest lesson is to meet people, you know, where they are and see them at that heart level. Well, then I transitioned into heaven, which I call heaven. And to me, it was a holding place, though. It looked like the earth in perfection. Like if you can imagine an untouched field where there is no decay, no rot, no drought, no anything, just like grass that's perfect colors that our eyes can't pick up on. I believe that our form limits how we, perceive consciousness or perceive reality. And there, I could perceive reality differently. I could be one blade of grass, but I could also be all the blades of grass. I could be the entire sky, but also just this one little part, of me. And so when I transitioned there, I thought, well, I'll be like a little child, like that voice said. I'll transition into heaven as a child because I was a very pure child, very much in love with Jesus as a child. I grew up in an evangelical church, and I had a real relationship with Jesus as a kid. And so I went into this field like a child, and my grandfather was there, and he looked great. He had died at 71, but he looked about 35 or 40, and his eyes were more light than eyes. They were just this light that I saw from God, that I saw from the angels, and he communicated with telepathy, said he loved me, said everything was going to be fine. We spent some time together in that realm, and I began to see how people always ask, what do people do in heaven? Well, they can use their consciousness to create situations that are fun for them. And when I was a kid, I used to ride in this truck that my grandfather had, and he had given to our family. And it had sat in our yard and just rusted and decayed because my dad never did anything with it. And there in heaven, the way his mind created it, it was perfect. And people always ask about that, like, why was there a truck in heaven? Well, it was something that we loved. So if you love your pets, you'll see your pets in heaven. If you love a certain car, you'll get to drive around in that car. Like the consciousness allows you to create things. And so we were driving through this field, and I was in the back, and my feet were dragging the ground, and I just felt so much peace. And my grandfather kept turning around and looking at me, and then it was almost as if he got information, like I might not come back or I might stay in this realm. And he looked at me and he said, do you want to go on towards God? And I knew what he meant, and I was excited. I just, my soul flew away immediately towards this huge light, which kind of looked like the sun. And so, but I knew this was God. And as I was flying there, I felt people's prayers pulling me back, and I could hear every word that they said. And I remember breaking through the prayers, like, okay, whatever, like I've got to go meet God, like it doesn't matter. And I know that sounds sad to people who are praying for someone that they love, that someone might actually just fly past this, but maybe it also gives hope that people are so excited to meet God that they're beginning to feel that love, that perfection, that it's so much better than this world. And that's what I was beginning to feel is, I feel so good. This is what I've always wanted. This is everything I've always wanted. And as I was moving towards God, all the wounds of childhood and teenage years and early adult years were just being healed. I didn't feel like the same person each moment. It was as if people now do meditations and cleanses and downloads, and I feel like, well, you can't beat that one. That one's the best one. Just God's pure love, just shining through every part of your soul and reminding you that you are a part of God, that you are love, and that you are loved, and that you are safe, and that all is well. And then the closer I got to God, the less I wanted to come back here. And the minute I started having those thoughts, it was almost as if an energetic wall came down and I hit it. And then I heard this booming voice. People always imagine God as masculine, but it's more like it rings through you. That powerful is a better term for it. There was no gender. It was just like undeniable. So it's like a part of you. So as God speaks, it also vibrates through you. And you can't not hear God's voice. That's, people often say, I don't know if I'll hear God. Oh, if God speaks directly to you, you can't deny it. It will shake you to your core. And I heard God say, look down. And I looked down, and suddenly, and space and time is different. I don't know if I was seeing the future. Very well could have been, because the campus where I teach now is called Trinity River Campus, and it overlooks a river. But I saw this river, and I saw people with shadows around them and people who were just full of light that connected to God. And so either they had shadows or they had light. And someone asked me recently, what was the percentage? How many people had light? And, were there more people covered in darkness than in light? And there were quite a few people with light, but if I had to estimate, I would say more than half were dealing with some sort of shadows. So some sort of depression, some sort, and it didn't have to be that they were bad people. Sometimes just drinking too much or just feeling sorry for yourself or feeling lost in depression can cut you off from that joy of God. And it's not your fault. It's just you need healing, you need community. There's a lot of things that are needed to reconnect people to that light of God. And there's not a lot of communities that do that for people. And so I was meant to help people's self-esteems and remind people to basically just be open to healing from God, because sometimes just that openness is enough. You don't have to follow a certain religion. You don't have to, talk to a particular healer. You yourself can have a relationship with God. You can say, I would like to heal this within myself. I'd like to feel God's energy, and you can feel it. And I think it was shown, though, in a different way at that time that I had to be a teacher, that I was going to be able to do this through education, and I was going to teach students, and I would bring some of this reminder to my students. And then about 5 years ago, I got another message from God, and it kind of shocked me that my mission is complete. And I remember thinking, what, am I going to die now? Or can I just go to Costa Rica and sit in a hammock? Do I have to work? Because I'm kind of tired. What's going on here, God? But ultimately, it's just been like any other near-death experiencer. Now I still teach, but I don't have this direct mission. It was almost like I had soul contracts with several students. And some students were possibly going to commit suicide if they didn't connect with me. Some students were really going to not heal at the rate that they were meant to heal. And so I was meant, we all help awaken each other. And so I think I was just an awakening point for certain students. And it's not that I even had to do anything. I mean, I really believe that light just worked through me. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but some people might call it a Kundalini awakening, but sometimes people associate this with like a soulmate or twin flame. You're activated by someone. You just remember something of your soul. And what that activation is really just that remembrance of, oh, I do have a soul. I do have a mission. And I was meant to connect with this teacher or this mentor or this person just to remember my soul mission. Thank you. And sometimes people think that they have to have a relationship with that person or stay in contact with them or, but it's not that. It's just, we are here to awaken one another and to help each other on this journey and to remind each other to really be in that light of all that is possible. And I think education is a pretty straightforward way, especially when I teach literature and English. Students write about their lives, what they're going through, and education is a place where people's self-esteem can be raised, where people can be complimented on what they do well in education, where you can let people dream about how they want to change the world and the contribution that they can make. And so I think education is a great place for creativity and for self-growth and for learning. And I always have thought this. I know that a lot of people may not think this about education, but in the right setting, it is fantastic. And it has been such a pleasure to work with students and to really feel these messages from the other side. Sometimes I hear my students are usually young, so I might hear from their grandparents who are on the other side, and they'll start talking to me about what the student needs. And I don't rarely tell the students about this, but I am guided on the other side in a lot of my interactions with students. And ultimately, I've felt joy, and I think that's why God told me to teach, is I have experienced healing from the things that I experienced as a kid, growing up in poverty, bullying, abuse, at emotional, physical abuse as a kid, all sorts of things, and I've encountered this in other people, and we've talked about healing, and I've been able to be a support system for kids who are going through a lot, and going through some things that are far worse than I ever dreamed of. So it has been an awesome journey.
You said that you had a lot of questions from people when they find out about your NDE. They ask you questions. Can you mention here the most common questions?
Yes, yes. So one of the most common questions is about the candy bar. And so it's a longer answer that I'll give you here. So my mother and stepfather are, they believe, they go to a church that did not accept my near death experience. So when I went home with them to their house to recover, at first my mom was kind of fascinated, that I'd had this experience. She was disappointed that I didn't see Jesus in my near death experience, but she did find it fascinating that at the moment she and my father, my biological father, were on their knees praying and they both felt that I had died. That's when my stepdad came in with the candy bar and offered them some of the candy bar and made a joke. And so I found it interesting that my biological parents knew that I'd left my body. And I felt their very prayers that they were praying on the other side. So they were two of the people whose prayers I felt. And so I hope that gives people comfort that prayers are indeed felt. And then, one, yes, the candy bar was verified, but then I've not had my mom on talk shows because she dealt with a lot of depression and she was abusive to me as a kid. And it's always very challenging when you have different spiritual beliefs and when you've suffered abuse and gaslighting from a parent. So a few months after my near death experience, she told her minister about my near death experience. And a lot of Christian ministers, if you don't see Jesus and it's not like right in line with the Bible, they just throw it out and they say it's of the devil. And this is the second question. A lot of people say, "Aren't you defrauded by the light?" And my mom said, "Look, a lot of near death experiencers get divorced. A lot of them, leave the church, and a lot of them, are not afraid to kill themselves." And I was like, okay, slow down. This one woman left her Baptist minister husband because she just was more open minded. I was like, I think that was an improvement. I don't think that all divorces are bad, mom. Like they just thought differently. And I think when people have a massive spiritual change, they just may not, even if it's just an awakening, they may not resonate with the partner that they're with. And I was like, you can't say that. And I was like, Mom, you're divorced. Like you remarried my stepdad. Like sometimes people grow in different ways, and you can't say a near death experience is bad because someone changed. And I was like, and I'm 22, like, what does it matter? Like I don't even have a boyfriend at that time, and so it seemed like a mute point, on that level. And then on another level, the pamphlet had so much fear in it, and I don't believe that fear is of God. That's not what I felt over there. So any religion that instills fear into you to change your behavior is created by men. And there's a lot of research. You can look back to the Gnostic Bible, you can look back to other, I guess, just kind of throw it all out. There's love and there's fear, and that's how it was boiled down as a lesson to me. And so I was like, I can't even go to your church, Mom, or listen to this pamphlet because there's too much fear. And I said, and if there are near death experiencers who kill themselves, you know, it's a tough subject. And I am very much in favor of euthanasia. I don't really see leaving the body a little early as a bad thing. But I know that suicide hurts people. And so, as long as you can be of use and of service to this world, it's always better not to commit suicide. But I don't condemn people who do. And a lot of these churches do. and will tell parents that their kids are burning in hell. And I do not think that's accurate from what I have seen of the other side, from what I've experienced, and all these interviews that I've done too with near death experiencers. I've interviewed some, like Howard Storm, who have seen hell. And hell seems to be a place that is self created and self condemned. Almost people who um, are living with a dog eat dog mentality and really despise God and really almost choose of their own making, to be disconnected from God in a sense. And I didn't really have a soul like that. I was agnostic, but I was open, to merging with the all, to kind of in a Walt Whitman way, just I kind of imagine that I'd just be like a molecule in some dirt and plants, that came up through the earth. I didn't think it would be as magnificent as it was. And I found the afterlife to be very magnificent. So, yes, the candy bar was verified. No, my parents are not necessarily supporters of my story. Um, and yet I love them. We do have a relationship. And so it's always tenuous to talk about someone who's living. I love my mother. I want to have a relationship with her. I don't want to condemn her for the 19-year-old that she was when she had me and raised me. And I was just an easy target. She had a tough life, and a lot of rage was sent in my direction. And maybe I was a tough kid. I was a very smart kid. I mean, I'm not bragging by saying this, but like I read the Bible before kindergarten, the King James Bible, and I had problems with it. I had problems with the Bible. And here she was, this Christian who was trying to beat me into submission. And I was like, why am I reading Leviticus, like about rape and murder? This is terrible. Like this is good. This can't be God. So I was a sarcastic kid. I think I was an old soul that came in. And so I'm sure it was very tough for my mother, as a 19-year-old to raise. So, I have a lot of compassion for all people. And I think my point to my mom and to others who are Christian was like, hey, I'm wrong and you're wrong too, but we're all loved. We all win. So can't we just be happy about that? But I think some people are very dug in. No, 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 I'm right and you're wrong. And I'm going to heaven because I chose this religion. And I'm like, choosing a religion is not your ticket to the other side. You already have a ticket just for being born, just for being a human being. You are loved by God, you're loved by Jesus, you're loved by all the ascended masters, you're loved. And if you just remember that, that's your ticket.
Well, that was actually my second question I was going to ask you, but you basically answered to that. What was the attitude of people around you? Because you mentioned you were a Christian, and then you came back and you were like, "Oh, I've seen heaven," and they were suspicious. How they behaved, all the Christian people in your life, how they reacted to your
Oh,
experience.
well, I was agnostic actually. So I was raised Christian, and by the time I was in seventh grade, and I didn't tell my family this, but it was kind of obvious by the time I got to college. I I cared about science. I cared about rational explanations for things. I really did not care about religion. In fact, the way I looked at it, I was like, ooh, okay, so my mom and dad are broke and they have a terrible marriage. Religion has done absolutely nothing for them. I'm going to throw religion out. I'm going to go to school and get good grades and get a good job and f religion. That was kind of my whole thought at that point, is that it didn't do them any good. If anything, it kept them in miserable marriages, just out of duty.
Yeah, because I think a Catholic religion has a lot of punishment for divorce or something. I'm not sure. I'm not a Catholic, but they have. But you can go and confess, and that it's all done. You're good.
Yeah, yeah. So my grandmother was Catholic. My mom was evangelical. Evangelicals are a little bit harsher. My grandmother was actually kind of cool about it. She was the one person when I talked about angels, she was open to that, and so we talked a little bit about it. She went down to the gift shop and got me a notebook, so that I could write down some of what I saw of the angels. And then I didn't have I had a lot of agnostic friends at college, and they were young, and they didn't really know what to do. The only spiritual person in my life was a neighbor, and she believed in angels, and her roommate was into Reiki, and so suddenly, my neighbor became my best friend, and most of the family kind of looked at my experience with distrust, but maybe a little interest, in that television shows eventually covered it, and there was a lot of media around it, but that was the wrong reason to look at it. I think what has been most fascinating with my family is every funeral that I've gone to, I just almost get angry inside because I don't think that what people are saying at these funerals are correct. At my grandmother's funeral, there was this message that was put forth that death is scary and dark and we don't know what it is, but if you have faith in God, it will help you. And I was like, oh, no, no, it's light and it's beautiful and it's a release from the pain of this body, and it's a release from the brain that has so much judgment. Death is beautiful. Death is birthed into a new environment. And many yogis and many near death experiencers and many people can tell you about this and ease your fear, that you do indeed go on, and it's not what you think it is. So I've heard that. I've heard ministers condemning kids, as I said before, who have died of overdoses, and they've actually, I think that's abusive to tell parents that their kids are burning in hell. They're already suffering, and it's not the truth. God has so much compassion for people that if there's like an ounce, like even just a tiny, tiny piece of a person who wants love, then love is there. Anyone who wants healing or wants love or wants to be rehabilitated and wants to escape the pain of this earth is going to be met with so much healing and so much love. And I just think a lot of ministers are wrong. So as you can imagine, saying such things, especially in the South, I get a lot of hate mail, but it's calmed down because I think the longer you're around and people realize they're not going to change you, the more they kind of give up on you. I will. That's that woman.
Well, so you said there was a lot of publicity around this. What kind of publicity? You got invited to podcasts or TV shows to talk about your NDE? What kind of publicity?
Yeah, so not at first. So this happened in 95 and I stayed very quiet and I just taught school, and I immediately went into teaching. And I think around 2007 or 8, I joined IANS. And at that time, I didn't even think, I mean, that whole time, I'd never told my story except to students in the classroom or to friends or to people. I didn't look at it as publicity. And I remember reading Eben Alexander's story and thinking, oh, that's so beautifully written. He really did a great job. And Danny and Brinkley and others. And I thought, there's plenty of these stories out here. I don't need to write mine. But the interest just kept growing. So as soon as I told my story at one local IANS group, she referred me to the I Survived Beyond and Back series. Then people started recognizing me from that TV show. They watched the reruns. And then, there were several other little outlets that started talking about it. But in 2000, when was it, 16 or 17, National Geographic profiled 5 near death experiencers, and I got a full, like, not the cover but a full page in National Geographic of my picture. Terrible picture, but but nonetheless, National Geographic is a major magazine, and it's this type of magazine that crosses over into science as well. And so I thought, oh my god, the agnostics of this world, they might read my story. And they summed it up with 2 little sentences, my experience, and it was really kind of terrible what they wrote in a way. And so I thought, oh, I can't let that stay. And so I started a blog and I started blogging in response to it. And then eventually that blog just kind of turned into a book. And then the book led to, meeting more people and more podcasts and all that. But it has been The best part of all of this has been speaking to people who are in grief, whether this is through giving medium readings or just speaking to people, because I think near death experiencers really have a different perspective on death. We kind of get excited. It's almost like a going home, not necessarily a horrific thing. No one likes pain in the body. I don't look forward to it. No one does. But at a soul level, it's a reunion. It's a confirmation that you did your absolute best here. It is a reunion with God and with all that is perfect. And so a lot of times we're misunderstood here on earth, near death experiencers. I don't think people believe in this love. They think that it's false, or, they condemn us for the parts of us that are human. And I'm not saying that I'm all loving. I'm just saying I know what all loving is and what it feels like. And anytime I can try to bring some of that here to earth, I do.
Now, let me ask you about the angels. You said you saw three angels. There is a lot of art around angels for a long, long, long time, probably thousands of years. People were drawing angels and taking, now they're doing like a digital art about angels. Do the angels that people draw or create look like the angels that you've seen?
No, because the wings are the main thing that I'd seen in paintings. I love art, and I've been to many art museums, the Hermitage, the Louvre, just some really great art museums. They were very intelligent. That was the first thing that hit me. And their eyes were not eyes, but they were just light. And it wasn't like lasers. It was just like this beautiful effervescent light that talked, that gave information and healing. They were androgynous, so some paintings show them with kind of wavy hair about shoulder length, and that seems accurate. So it was like thicker than my hair, almost like gray or colorless, or white, because they were mainly made of light. So their hair was, and though they weren't masculine or feminine, they seemed strong. So they were this higher intelligent human face, but made of light, bigger than humans. And if they had wings, it was more just this sense of energy, that they could move through time and space differently, that they had a different way of traveling. And they did not look alien to me. They looked human, in the sense of hair and facial features and beauty. I'd say that even though they were androgynous, they were beautiful. Like kind of like you would imagine, like good bones or good facial features. I don't know how to describe it any other way than they were just like handsome and beautiful at the same time. And and yet that wasn't the point. Like the point was they were intelligent, and how they looked is very hard to describe, because how do you describe something that's made of light? And yet looks sort of human, but larger than human.
So basically, the human vocabulary is not enough to describe those angels.
It's not. It's not. Just they're intelligent. That's the main thing I keep coming back to, is they have healing powers and they're deeply intelligent.
We yet have to invent those words to use so we can describe this kind of experiences.
I wonder, how they do sketch artists, and they work with people who are trying to solve crimes. I'd like to sit down with a great artist and see if they could, like go back and forth with me.
Who do you think those angels were?
I felt honored that they were there for me. So there was this sense of, were they archangels who showed up with healing power? Were they my guardian angels? If those are my guardian angels, and I kind of lean towards they're my guardian angels, each of us has very powerful forces that are here with us. So every single one of us. And, most people believe that we each have two angels. These angels it was humbling to me that I had such intelligence following me around, and almost a little sad that maybe we don't use them enough, or know how to use them or know how to harness that power to do more in the world. I was like, wow, these amazing beings have been with me this whole time, and and I haven't done anything with it.
Yeah, it's like I was good. I could have taken advantage of that, but I didn't, right?
Yes.
Like my angel, help me win a lottery, please.
Yeah, yeah. Greater abundance.
Do you think you lost your personality when you got to the other side? You lost your individuality, or you were still Trisha? You were still you with everything that you acquired on this earth, or you became somebody else?
It's a really good question. I think the things that made me shy at that, because I was shy most of my life, were sometimes culture repressing me, parents repressing me, telling me, to fear this or fear this, abuse or weird energy from people. It there was a lot that maybe suppressed who I might have been. And I think the essential me stayed me, and it was like a lot was removed, and I was brought back more to the wholeness of who I was when I came into this earth. So a lot of near death experiencers call it a second birthday because it's almost like everything that you learned, like was erased up until 22, and just your soul, the essence of you came back. So I came back a lot stronger, a lot more vocal, a lot more. I would just blow things off, and I think life was easier for me before the near death experience. To be honest, I was distrustful of people and guarded, which did protect me from some sociopaths and weirdos in this world. Like honestly, I was kind of a hardened 22-year-old who'd worked in restaurants and strip clubs, and I knew how to keep people away from me. But when I came back, I was open, I was full of love, and I was just this person who wanted to see the best in every human being and remind every human being of their best qualities, no matter who they were. And sometimes people can take advantage of open natures like that. It's almost like being two in a 22-year-old's body, just like, hey, that kind of joy is fun. And you kind of become like the eternal child, which is, if you look at archetypes, it's a wonderful archetype. It helps people discover their creativity, connect to their joy, find their innocence again. But to not have boundaries in this world, that's been, like one of my big lessons is I can do that well in the classroom because there's police officers and principals and and lots of people. If there's a kid who's too much, that kid's out of the classroom. But in the rest of the world, there's not as much protection, and so I think there's that element of this world, which it looks so easy over there, fear and love.
Now you said that you looked down on earth and you saw that about 50% of people had some kind of heavy or dark shadow around them. 50% of people
Yeah,
were worried, were afraid, were not happy.
and it might have been more than 50. I know it might have been a little more than 50%. It's hard to say. I just saw, it was like I saw a part of humanity, a sample section. And I was very clear that in my own life, I had been depressed. I had taken drugs. I had, just been in my bubble. And that's the way I looked at it. Like, I didn't get outside of my bubble. I didn't feel other people's energy. I didn't care about other people. It was Trisha, 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 Trisha. Like that was it before my near death experience. And I think a lot of people walk around like that. Age teaches you empathy, and, we kind of grow into um, a greater understanding a lot of times. But I think most people do think about their coffee, their day, what's going on for them, not the greater picture of, how am I going to affect the world? What's my mission? Is God helping me? Like these are really, deep questions that the average person doesn't think about. then even religion doesn't necessarily remind people about their vibration and their openness to God. A lot of times, religion might be inspirational, or it might remind people of some beautiful things to focus on to change their frequency and their energy. But this seemed to be, it didn't matter if someone was religious or not. Someone could just be excited and totally agnostic and atheist, but they could be excited about, like, I'm going to invent something that's going to clean up the water, that I'm going to, have this new invention that's going to help apartment complexes have clean water, and it's going to be amazing. And I'm fighting climate change, and like I'm fighting this, or I'm like, and they're excited about what they're doing. They're being assisted by angels, and they're being assisted by God, because they're in the joy of bringing something to the earth. And so if you're excited about creating these interviews, if you're excited about making a film, if you're excited about something, that is light. So light isn't just fear, it's like kind of being in your joy. And God supports your joy. God supports, your creativity. And if you don't have joy, go be of service, because like being of service somehow connects you to God working through you to help others. And that's kind of what I saw, is I could be depressed, but the minute I stepped into the classroom, I was like, "Ooh, there's 25 people here who need something from me. I better, like, let that depression go, and like connect back to the light." So I wouldn't say that, and this is, a lot of near death experiencers might not admit to this, but I'm very human, and I'll admit that I still struggled with depression. I still struggled with human problems, but I let it go in the classroom, because I was of service. And it was a long trajectory of learning how to fully heal myself.
Do you think you are a star seed?
So, from what I know of that term, starseeds seem intent on bringing peace to this earth. They really look at war and trauma and all the things that are going on right now as very archaic and out of date, and something we need to collapse in society. So we feel very much ahead of time. I think I've felt that way since I was a kid. I have had dreams, and this is before the near death experience, where, the Cold War was going on with Russia when I was a kid. And I had this dream that I was grown up and I was a woman, and I went to this window and I put my hand at the window, and a Russian woman put her hand on the other side of the glass, and I was like, we're the same. And then it was like this instant where I realized everyone's the same all around the world, and their countries create these conflicts. They don't understand the conflicts sometimes. They just want to live a good life. And this idea of, why are we not putting peace first? Why are we not putting feeding all the people in the world and peace first, is just unbelievable, I think, to me, at a soul level. And so, yes, and in many ways, I can say that I am a star seed, or at least I resonate with the idea of peace, harmony. And I do kind of look at the whole evolution of humanity as, I think it was a good thing that I became agnostic, that I moved from religious to agnostic to spiritual. And I think that's the trajectory. I think religions will change and accept. We're even seeing it. Like John Burke, a minister, included my story in his book. There are many ministers who are opening up to what near death experiencers teach us about God. And I think churches will change to really support people almost the way social workers support people, that churches will evolve, will become more open minded, and that science is also beginning to see the space time continuum fall apart. And maybe science and religion both will move into this more spiritual way of seeing the world, and realizing that we're all connected, and that we are harmed when other people are harmed. And so if there's war going on around the world, we feel that at an energetic level. And so what's the answer? I don't know. I think every person on earth, we have to, like, switch to a more peaceful inner world within each of us, and that may take time.
Okay, how does human earthly love differ from the eternal spiritual love?
God's love was far more powerful and it cleansed me of pain of the past. So it was healing. So sometimes human love is healing or affirming. I think some parents are able to give unconditional love to their children. It just isn't as powerful as God's love, though. And I think that's most near death experiencers realize that and they go, there is no love that compares to that. So, say you were looking for the biggest high on earth, whatever that would say, a drug addict. I'm going to use this, as or a love addict is looking for the best, most passionate, most amazing, unconditional love. It just wouldn't compare to God. Like it would never be enough. It would never be a big enough hit. It would never be great enough. That God's love is so much more powerful and profound than anything we've experienced here. And so near death experiencers end up being kind of lonely, in fact, because they themselves can't often express that love that they want to express, and they certainly don't receive it, here on earth, and it's disappointing. It's incredibly disappointing, but I think we can keep trying to love people more unconditionally. And I think that a classroom, when you're in a position of power, if you're a mentor, if you're a teacher, if you're someone in power over others, you can give unconditional love to others. That's a good safe place to do that. But if we had more of God's love, we would just accept people as they are, smile at them, tell them that they're awesome, and that they are God's children, that we just love people as they are.
So did you get disappointed when you came back by the human love here on earth comparing to the eternal spiritual love?
Yeah, I'm certainly disappointed that people manipulate, that they use love as a form of manipulation, because that's not God's love at all. That's not a.
Yeah.
And then there was a lot of ego involved, I think, with love here, and that's disappointing and sad. I think the truest form of love is kind of freedom in a sense. So like, just moments when you're able to love someone without any strings attached to it, like just go, oh, I wish you well. I hope your journey is really wonderful. So it's almost like students, clients, anyone just briefly, you can wish them well. If we could keep that energy, in every moment of our lives with family and people close to us, that would be a whole lot better. It's very hard.
Okay, Tricia, I'm going to ask you a question. I know the answer to it, but I'm still going to ask you. Are you afraid of that?
No. So sometimes, I know this sounds weird, and I don't think I've ever said this in an interview, but if I got a diagnosis that meant I was dying soon, I think there's this part of me that would be a little excited. Just like when someone is dying, I get a little excited thinking, are they going to, what angels are they going to see? Who's going to be there for them? There's a little part of me that I get to see God again, that is excited to die. There's another part of me that lives with chronic pain and looks at the realities of life and looks at, oh, I don't want to be older in a nursing home, and I don't want to suffer, and so I don't like aging necessarily, but I don't mind death. So I want to live a full life as long as I can, and then I want a very quick death.
Yeah, in your sleep.
Yeah, ultimately, yes, or but I have been tested, and I think I did say this in one interview, but I was in a plane that was going down, and we lost both engines, and so we were falling from the sky, and we were in the crash position, our heads down, and the people on both sides of me, I was in the middle seat. This woman and this guy, they were crying, and he especially was crying. And I was holding their hands and I was talking to him, and he's like, I can't die. I have two kids. I've got to take care of these kids. And he was just like bawling. And I said, look, man, if we die, this is meant to be. This is God's timing. We won't even feel it. We're going to go right to the light. You're just going to be so happy. You're still going to be connected to your kids over there in that realm. It's going to be fine. Love never dies. We're going to be met with the greatest amount of love that you've ever felt in your life. It's going to be cool. And, and then the second engine caught and we made an emergency landing. And when I got out, both of them, looked at me and they're like, "Who are you?" But I was
It's
completely
incredible.
calm, like there's nothing I could do.
They ran away from you as fast as they could, right? Yeah, this woman is from mental asylum. We don't want to talk to her anymore.
Oh.
Okay, one more question. Tricia, what's your definition of freedom?
you know, I think freedom and love exist in the presence of God, and they exist simultaneously, and that's what we can't seem to grasp here. Freedom seems like the ability to choose, but in the state of healing, you would only choose something loving or something fun or something blissful or something playful. You would only choose good. You wouldn't choose anything painful because you'd know that anything you chose that was painful, you'd have to feel it too. So, freedom is this ability to choose, but it's like being free of the darkness too, being free of the fear that we live with here, being free of all that.